Now we would like to start the Technology Session 5, Digital Technology to Achieve Efficiency and Decarbonization. First of all, I would like to introduce the moderator for this session, Ms. Natalie Samovich. Ms. Samovich is the MCPV co-founder of Resilient Group and head of research and innovation at Intercodem. The speakers for this session are Professor Dr. Antonello Monti, Professor, Eon Energy Research Center, RWTH Ahan University. Mr. Sugibayashi Tadahiko, co-founder, CEO, Nanobridge Semiconductor Incorporated. Dr. Kari Dahlgren, Research Fellow, Emerging Technologies Research Laboratory, Monash University. Ms. Areti Natodimo, Editor, Smart Energy International. Now, I would like to ask Ms. Samovich to moderate this session. Ms. Samovich, if you please.
Yes, thank you so much for the introduction. It is great to be here, in spite of the fact that it's still in the digital format, but it's a great opportunity to actually bring the topic into the discussion. And the reason why I'm very excited about the session today, it's because our digital session is very special this year. It is quite unique, and the focus is not necessarily on the hardware technology development. Today, we will talk about how digital technologies can change the way we live, work, and also we can talk about the ethical issues related to the digitalization and the digital technologies, and also potential challenges related to data. The overarching theme of ICEF2021 is still focusing on the energy sector and mostly on the carbon neutrality in addressing the overarching difficult task of decarbonization towards 2030 and 2050. But our session will provide a glimpse focus on the very much people-centered digitalization and the various innovation approaches. So I would like to welcome all of the speakers and thanks for the introduction. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yes, so the session theme is, as I mentioned, it's a technology session on using digital technologies as the solutions to supply-demand potential mismatches and the needed digital optimization on all three levels that I mentioned. The other theme is related to the technology to achieve efficiency and decarbonization. And the related lifestyle challenges and the values related to living and the new businesses that potentially can arise and the new business models arising from this process. We will also discuss the development of power saving technology, because we cannot achieve it without the technology at the end, but also in the energy efficient way. I will welcome everyone who participates in the discussion today to follow us on the social media and share your further opinions on Twitter and the LinkedIn of the organization. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yes, so I think the speakers were already introduced at the beginning. I would like to welcome everyone. As mentioned, I will moderate the session, and we have two parts of the session. You will see agenda in a moment. But very briefly, the sequence is going to be Professor Antonello Monti will start with his presentation, followed by Mr. Sugibayashi presentation. Then by Dr. Kari Dahlgren presentation, and we will finish presentation session with Ms. Areti Natodimo presentation. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yes, we have 1 hour for our session today. After the presentations of the speakers, we will go into the second part, which I'm very excited about, and I hope you also actively participate in the second part and share your questions with us. So the second part will be a discussion where the organization actually would like to focus on a number of questions to address the speakers, but we will also welcome the questions from the audience. So we will have about 25 minutes for the discussion and 5 minutes to wrap up the session. So, and now without any further ado, I would like to invite Professor Antonello Monti to share his insights with us. So his presentation is going to be focused on the main theme of the presentation is how to develop a service-driven energy ecosystem, which I think bring all of the three topics and main focus of the session together. And his key message is digitalization is radically transforming the energy system. A key aspect in this respect is the role of the customers. What is going to determine the future of our energy bill? And I would like to give stage to Professor Monti.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for having me today for this keynote presentation. Let's move directly to the next slide. Let's start with the context. In Europe, the digitalization means a combination with some important legislation, which is fundamentally defined by the so-called Green Deal. If you could click a couple of times more. And this is putting together the elements and defining what the energy system of the future should be. Could you click two more time, please? And again, and the digitalization then is in the middle, let's say, so the energy system as a whole is in the middle of two different changes. Click again, please, and then let's see the different challenges. We have data models that are going to be affected by this change. Click again a couple of times. And this means that we need those. We have architecture with our under development and business model that still have to be improved. The governance, which is still not there. But last but not least, and I'll come back to this point several times, the sector coupling that has to be brought to a completely different level. This is all the context that define really digitalization of energy. And let's try to understand what are the implications if I look from strictly the electrical grid. Next slide, please. If we think about the classical grid, click again, please. Sorry, there's a lot of animation. Our view in the regional was we have the load, and then we balance controlling the generation. And that's been the protocol of everything that's been working. But click one more time, please. The question is, how do we achieve this is vice versa. The input is on the other side. How we keep this balance when we invert the equation, because now it's generation driving, not more the consumption. Let's go to the next slide. That brings then the question. And the question is how we create the condition for what we call flexibility. If generation is the input, we need now to be able to access, let's say, a sort of control. That's what we call flexibility. On the other side, to bring the equation again. That means the customer now the most important element in the grid is not anymore just, as I say here provocatively, the one paying the bill, but is also a major asset owner. Currently in Germany, if I assemble all the generation from customer, is the #1 producer of energy in Germany. This is a total revolution. And that means that we need them from the active part, we need them from the economical part. And that's why I understand it, as I said at the opening of my presentation, is not just technical, is a big social component behind this. And we have to understand how that can be activated. Next slide, please. And so that means we need to completely change. We need to understand how we get there. Then in a system in which the incremental cost of energy is basically null, does it make sense that we charge people for the kilowatt hour? If not, what are the alternatives? And here when it comes, one more click, please, and that we move to a service-driven energy provision, which means the kilowatt hour is not anymore the focus of our attention, but we have to completely change different business model, which not necessarily have electricity at the center of everything, but actually the customer as a customer experience at the center of everything. Next slide, please. Which means we think in terms of services. People will have at home a lot of assets, as you can see here, solar panels, battery, any other type of equipment. What do we interact with? For example, we don't sell anymore the gas or whatever goes into the house for heating, but we sell a home that is warm. And people react simply with hot and cold, and they pay just for a warm house. How that is achieved is not a question. You pay a service that is decoupled in principle from the point of view of the customer. Or one more click. My comfort, even bigger, is not just the temperature, it's the temperature, the air quality and everything, and the people pay for that. And then we delegate as a customer that somebody achieve in this goal that we want in a way that we don't really care as a customer, which means also we remove a lot of concern from the customer in the change of a service that actually facilitate the community operation of the system. Next slide, and I'm coming to the conclusion. Oh, one more point. But everything needs a very fast process. And the fast process cannot be done with closed solutions. So there is a strong call for open source cooperation, because this revolution cannot happen in a day. And then we need everybody to work together. This is a critical message. Things like Linux Foundation Energy are playing a key role in driving this process. Let me bring it now finally to the conclusion in the next slide. I very briefly gave you an overview of what is happening in the energy sector thanks to digitalization. And the key message, as I said, is customer as a cornerstone means completely different business cases, but we need open standard, open solution. Otherwise, we don't meet the deadline 2030, 2050. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Monti. And thank you for bringing those important messages on the table and putting them within the context and the focus on the consumer. So any questions from the audience we will address during the discussion session, and I'm sure you will be able to bring more points during that time. Thank you so much for your presentation. I would like to now introduce the next speaker of this session. So if you can please share the slide, and I hope I have the right view.
In a sustainable digital society, high efficiency in power consumption is required for edge devices, such as electric vehicles, robots, and wireless sensor nodes. Some semiconductor technologies are believed to contribute to their efficiency improvement because semiconductor chips are used in all the devices. Now I talk about atom switch, which is such a semiconductor technology. Recently, almost all the edge devices are connected to the internet. However, since the bandwidth of the internet is limited, all the data of the devices cannot be processed by AI in the cloud. Inference portion of AI has begun to be installed in edge devices to respond quickly and to send only necessary data to the cloud. Learning portion of AI is still in the cloud. Programmability is required for the semiconductor that perform the AI processing in each device because the real world is diverse. Von Neumann processors, such as CPUs, has high programmability. However, they are less power efficient due to the software decoding. Programmable semiconductors, such as FPGAs, can achieve both high power efficiency and programmability because they use only hardware in processing. FPGAs are expected to be used in more devices in 2030, and the market size is expected to reach $20 billion. We believe Atom Switch can further improve the power efficiency of edge devices using FPGAs by a factor of 10. This feature of Atom Switch accelerates the growth of the FPGA market. Programmable semiconductor functionality is based on signal wiring switching. As shown in the figure, simply exchanging two signals activates 4 switches. This means that many switches are needed on the chip. Atom switches are non-volatile switching elements that switch the signal wiring in a semiconductor chip. They can be used instead of switching transistors. A single atom switch is composed of less than 100 copper atoms in a solid electrolyte. Its area is much smaller than the area of the transistor. Due to the small area, the chip size of the atom switch FPGA is small. This improves the power efficiency of the atom switch FPGA. In addition, the atom switch is non-volatile, so the atom switch FPGA can be powered off when not needed. These increase the power efficiency of edge devices by a factor of 10. NanoBridge is the atom switch made by NanoBridge Semiconductor. An 100 kilogate class NanoBridge FPGA was mounted on the JAXA satellite and demonstrated in the satellite orbit in 2020. The chip fabrication was supported by NEDO. We aim at spreading Atom Switch to every edge device in 2030 and contribute to the high efficiency of a sustainable digital society.
Thank you so much for your stark message, Mr. Sugibayashi, and for bringing the topic of the edge technologies and what enables the edge technologies and the challenges that we all understood very well in the stark messages within the past year and a half, and what needs to be developed further and what innovation is needed on the energy efficiency specifically. We will once again, so audience is welcome to pose the questions, and we will go back to more discussions on the topic in the later session. And I would like to now ask Dr. Kari Dahlgren to share with us her vision within the presentation that she prepared for us on the topic of ethnographic insights into automated energy futures. We're all very curious about the topic and your insights. So I will even skip the key messages that you will share with us at the moment, and would like to give you stage. You're very welcome, Kari. Take it over.
Hello, my name is Dr. Kari Dahlgren. I'm a research fellow at the Emerging Technologies Research Lab at Monash University. Today I'm going to be presenting on the research of the Digital Energy Futures Project. This is a 3-year Australian Research Council linkage in partnership with Ausgrid, AusNet Services, and Energy Consumers Australia, and I work on it with my colleagues listed here. We're social scientists, and our research is guided by the overarching question of how will people live in the future with digital and energy technologies? And then what will this mean for energy forecasting and future demand? It's also guided by revealing the entanglements of energy technologies and emerging digital technologies. And despite the critical importance that developments in digital tech have for the energy sector, only rarely are the energy implications of these technologies considered by their developers, particularly things like smart home tech, which are more concerned about selling comfort, convenience, and pleasure to customers, and they don't think so much about the energy implications of these technologies. By contrast, the energy sector is looking very strongly into digital technologies to help manage electricity demand. The energy sector is expecting that smart technologies and automation embedded in tech like smart appliances will help to manage energy use, and in particular that they're crucial to delivering the energy trilemma of reliability, affordability, and sustainability. So on the one hand, we have this future vision and goal of the energy smart home that's all about delivering efficiencies through automation and smart appliances, with lots of feedback and energy data from smart meters and various integrated distributed energy resources of solar PV, batteries, electric vehicles, which will be managed then through digital technologies and virtual power plants. And this vision of the energy smart home is really centered on matching household energy demand to renewable supply. But then we have this other vision of the smart home that's marketed to consumers, which is all about fun, pleasure, and comfort over energy savings. So our research is to interrogate how the visions of the smart home match onto the lived realities of households, and what technologies and in what conditions households might be willing to accept automated technologies into their homes and into their routines. I don't have time to go over the methods or many findings of the project here, but please, I'm happy to discuss more in the QA, and you're welcome to look at our website for more details and in our various reports. Briefly, we did virtual distance ethnography with 72 households across Victoria and New South Wales and Australia, with a diverse range of participants across various consumer groups. We inquired into people's existing practices, their routines, and their priorities across 7 everyday practice domains, as well as looking at their plans and imaginations for the future. And through this, we identified 45 different trends and 10 principles to help guide planning and forecasting around future life in homes, which can be found in our most recent report. So I only have time to briefly mention a few of the trends of interest here. First are some important trends around electric vehicles and people's charging behaviors. Obviously, while EVs are an important part of decarbonization, how and when people charge vehicles is very important, because if everyone charges when renewables are in short supply, it can actually undermine decarbonization goals. We found that existing EV users have a strong preference for charging their EVs at home, even with the availability of charging infrastructure in public places. And this was further enhanced due to the COVID pandemic and people's beliefs that they will continue to spend more time at home, including working at home in at least some capacity. We also found that people had very strong beliefs about optimal charging practices. Often this was due to concerns about preserving battery life and knowledge they had gained through previous experiences with battery-run technologies such as mobile phones, which they expect to continue to be relevant for EV batteries. This is ideas like batteries having memory, which means they should always be emptied before recharging to preserve battery life. And our research shows that these strongly held beliefs might get in the way of people accepting automation of their EV charging to match energy sector needs. For example, we found EV owners who overrid the automated charging functions embedded into their EVs using manual strategies, such as switching charging on and off at the wall, so the charging could better fit into their specific priorities for charging and their electricity bills. This relates to a broader finding throughout the project in relation to people's acceptance of automation and their desire for control around technologies of their home. We found that households want tailored control and automation that suits the priorities and preferences for diverse household members, and that takes into account and allows for unexpected events and circumstances. And in a survey that we conducted with our partners, Energy Consumers Australia, we found that there was really a high level of interest in smart appliances that would help save money by running at cheaper times. But in the end, 92% of these participants wanted ultimate control. So that's just one brief example of how energy industry visions that assume increased automation will help energy management need to actually consider how people use these technologies in their everyday lives. There's opportunities for sure, but how people will adopt these technologies needs to be considered in their design and rollout if they're going to have their intended effects. So I've only touched on a few brief points today, but for more information, please do look at our website and follow the project. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing your questions and your comments.
Thank you so much, Carrie. I learned a lot actually from the presentation. It is the topic that is on the forefront on a lot of the European debates, not only in the energy sector. So 45 trends identified in the research. Really looking forward to read the paper and the research results, and thanks for sharing the even coining some terms out there, realities of lived environments. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your insights, and I'm looking forward to the discussion session. And at this point, I would like to invite and give stage to our last speaker in this panel presentations, Ms. Areti Ntirdemu. Areti's presentation is focused on the ethical dimensions on the way to a carbon-free future. So not even neutral, but free future. She has lots of important messages to share with us, given her overarching and umbrella approach to a lot of that. So without further ado, I would like to give stage to Ms. Ndredemu. Areti, please take over. Thank you.
Everyone, I would like to thank you all for being with us today, as well as the organizers of this fine event and the moderator of the session, Ms. Samovic, for the kind invitation and the opportunity. I know that carbon-free is a bit optimistic, but one can always hope. So now I would like to discuss with you the ethical aspect brought to us by the digitalization of the energy sector. Slide, please. In Ethics 101, we learn all about the trolley dilemma, how there is a runaway trolley barreling down the railway tracks, how ahead on the tracks there are 5 people tied up and unable to move. The trolley is headed straight for them. We are standing close by, next to a lever. If we pull this lever, the trolley will switch to a different set of tracks. However, we notice that there is one person on the side track. We have 2 and only 2 options. 1, we do nothing, in which case the trolley will kill the 5 people on the main track. 2, we pull the lever, diverting the trolley onto the side track where it will kill 1 person. It is a tricky dilemma. Do we sacrifice 1 life to save 5? Now imagine that by pulling this lever, you transform this trolley into an autonomous vehicle and AI takes control, making the choice for you. Would you do it? Should you do it? This is but one example of how digitalization could change our future and the dilemmas that may accompany that future. Another, or should I say a series of dilemmas, follow the exchange and handling of data in the energy sector. In order to move forward towards a carbon-free future or neutral, we need to rely on fast exchange of big data. Innovators, startups, system operators, entrepreneurs have some tough moral choices to make in order to shape the energy sector of tomorrow. Let us take the example of smart grid. Slide, please. In order to operate well, system modeling, if we could change the slide, please. In order to operate well, system modeling, control, and optimization, a smart grid depends on data gathering and processing. In power system, the most often types of data are, again, I don't see the slide, so I will have to ask you once more to change the slide, please. And then I will stop. Okay, thank you very much. So data from supervisory control and data acquisition, SCADA, so measurements of environmental parameters, power system parameters by remote equipment. PMUs, data from phasor measurement units, so measurements of the electrical waveform, and data from energy consumers. In other words, measurements of energy consumption by meters. And this last source, data from consumers, is what generates an ethical dilemma because it interferes with our right to privacy. Slide, please. Nowadays, the discussions about privacy are mostly, but of course not only, intertwined with discussions about new technologies and more particularly information technology. Information technology has the potential to disrupt our thinking process by influencing our decisions, for example, fake news, or obtain personal information that perhaps we would rather not share with anyone. For example, algorithms going through our browser history to find commercially viable patterns. Thus, the concept of privacy has been of late divided between constitutional and informational privacy. The first one regards a person's freedom to make her own decisions about herself without any interference. Euthanasia is an example here. The second one, which concerns us here, regards the control a person has over her own information and what she chooses to share with others. Sharing personal pictures via social media, for example, or sharing her smart metering data. But what about the right we have to a sustainable future for us, non-human animals, and future generations? a future where climate change is about memory, a future that ensures affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy for everybody. That is a right too, and something as smart grid and data gathering can help us achieve. Slide, please. A solution comes from bioethics in the form of the so-called informed consent. Informed consent is shorthand for informed, voluntary, and decisionally capacitated consent. Consent is considered fully informed when a capacitated or competent person to whom fully disclosures have been made and who understands fully all that has been disclosed consents voluntarily to participation. The same solution has been adopted by telecoms and internet companies, websites, etc., around the world. Every time we accept cookies, for example, we give our consent, our informed consent, in order to browse the web page. Slide, please. Now, do I think that this is the perfect and final solution? No, I do not. There are a lot of hiccups on our path to informed consent, but I do believe it is a good starting point. Thank you very much for listening. And Natalie, back to you.
Thank you so much, Areti. Wow, I was taking notes of the main points, and actually, I have almost a paragraph on this. But what struck me in your presentation is a reminder to all of us that the smart grid will need data and a lot of the precise momentary data, so which is enabled by the systems and the consent that you brought into the equation. The ethical dilemmas are, there is a plethora of, the right to privacy and the climate change being about memory, and the topic of the bioethics is very important. Thank you so much for bringing all of this into our attention, and I hope the audience will have lots of additional questions. Thank you so much, Areti. Looking forward to the discussion. So since we're quickly running out of time of the session, I would like, without further ado, to step into the introduction of the second part of our session, which is focused on the debate discussion. And in order to set the scene of the debate and introduce the topic, I would like to share a couple slides with you. So if I can please have the slides of the presentation. For now, I just can see a red window and I do not see the slides. If these are already shared, then can everyone see the slides, or is it just me?
We can see it, yeah.
You can see the slide, okay. So I do not, then I hope, so I will narrate without seeing the slide. So our debate basically is centered on three key questions for the panel discussion. Is the further reflection on the role of consumers, prosumers, prosumagers, as was coined by the FSR institution in Europe, and their propensity to participate in the new models. Our second block of reflections would be actually focused on the topic of whether the industries are being agile and fast enough to not only to bring the technology into the market, but also the enabling solutions, because we all know that it's very difficult to scale up technology or new technologies without the full engagement of the users. And so what could be done on that level? And here, of course, and we already received the question from the audience related to the specifically on the technology development, addressed to Mr. Sugibayashi, which I hope he will be able to reflect upon. And the second block of questions and the discussion will be focused on the future pathways. We need to envision something where we're collectively moving towards. So in order to set the scene, I would like just to introduce very quickly two slides. So my presentation is focused on the digital context of the energy transition and transformations, and the consumer-centered and digital technology-enabled pathways. I think you see the slide on the panel discussion now. So if we can go into my presentation. Again, I don't see the presentation, but I will narrate over. So this is the slide that a lot of colleagues in the EU were working on. This is the exercise that's been that brought a lot of the actors in the energy system together. It's been done from ETIPSNet, European Strategic Technology Energy Plan, that brings most of the stakeholders in the energy system in the EU together. And what we've done actually is to not only to depict all the components where the energy transition will take place, be affected, or be driven from towards 2050, towards the decarbonization, but also what technologies are needed for the conversion, where the consumers are, and how they will be affecting this transition. There is a bit of animation in the presentation, so if we can click further, couple slides. And you see on the left-hand side corner, there are a number of networks that are depicted. And it is for the first time the network that's called data was put into the equation as the equal to the gas networks, electricity networks, and other energy enabling networks. What you don't see yet is the connectivity component, but it is right now inside the data. But in order to enable edge-driven systems, the connectivity and the related components, what we call continuous continuum is a computing continuum is going to be very important as well. And now very quickly on the role of the consumers. So if we can click through a number of slides where the consumers are depicted. So they are not just clustered around homes. The consumers and users of the systems are also in the offices, are actually active players in almost all of the components of the system. And I would like to stop at this. You see how complex the whole approach is. You see that digitalization touches upon all of the areas of the system, and it's actually transversal to already transversal and omnipresent energy system. So the challenge is complex. So let's try to decipher and share our visions as to how we're going to deal with this complex issue. So I would like to invite all of the speakers for the debate and actually start with the two questions that already been shared with us by the participants in this session. So the first question is really interesting, and I think links up with what I just presented to you. And the question is, what role the human is going to play in this complex system? If everything is going to be AI enabled, what is actually the role of human in this complex system? Not an easy question, so I would like to invite everyone to panelists to reflect on it. Who would like to start?
I'm happy to start.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so I think it's a good question, but I'm a social scientist, so for us, the question is really always about rebringing in the human into these questions. And I think even the language we use in the energy sector, customer or even prosumer, we're forgetting that we're actually talking about people, right? We're talking about everyday people making everyday decisions, living their everyday lives. And we kind of often forget, or we get in our own heads because we, are experts on energy and we understand how it works. But most people don't, right? Most people are just addressing their priorities, right? They're doing their laundry, they're getting their kids ready for school, And energy doesn't really come into the way they're thinking about the way they do these activities. So, the promise then of these AI and automation is that it can kind of take away some of that decision making from people. But as already said, what are the ethics of that, right? Do we really want to take away people's ethical choices and decision making? And of course, it is more complicated because we do have other priorities as a sort of collective, right? Which is addressing climate change and decarbonization. So I think one of the things that in our research that we really want to try to get at is how can we balance appealing to people and their ethics and their morals about climate change and sustainability, and use that kind of information to help develop kind of demand management, or to talk about kind of forms of automation that might fit into their existing priorities and routines and fit into their lifestyles. So it's not just saying AI will take over completely, but it's recognizing that there is some role for AI, but we also need to think about everyday people and their lives and ethics.
Great. Thank you so much for this uplifting message, Kari. Anyone else would like to reflect? Okay, let's start with Reti and then go to Antonello. Thank you.
Well, I agree with Dr. Dahlgren, of course, but I would like to put an extra dimension in this whole thing. Yes, we're talking about people, and people make decisions based not only on logic, but on emotion. And emotion is equally important in the forming of those decisions. So unless or until we make artificial intelligence that has emotions too, I would say that the human being will be central in everything. Just that from me.
Okay, thanks. Also an uplifting message. Thank you, Areti. Antonello?
I agree basically with everything that has been said so far. So at the end, people don't want to have more problems, but they want technology to take away problems, but they have to be aware of what they are giving out. And I think this is a very difficult point. We heard before about other example about data given to the social media. I don't know how many people really understand what they're doing when they post in terms of their data. So there is a huge issue of education not only at academic level, but at every level, to make people aware of their choices. I agree of what has been said. So we want to delegate, but we want to understand. And this understanding is not trivial, because even people educated don't really follow the complexity. And this is a real challenge. As professor, educator, how you bring this technology to be able to guide people in the street and make that easy to understand and to follow. That's not simple.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for this message, Antonello. I just would like to add that it will be a challenge also in terms of the upskilling and reskilling that we will need to do. I think the humans is going to play a very important role in this, but in a different function, more advanced function that will span across a number of fields and probably going broader versus more specialized as well. So I think it was a very positive message on the future. If I would like to go into the second question that was addressed to Mr. Sugibayashi, related to the technology development. So the question is, thank you for unique and realistic solution, but the devices development usually takes time and money. So how do you see this roadmap in terms of the funding, the technology, and then bringing it into the market, and what effort it would take? Mr. Sugibayashi, if you can address this question.
Thank you for the question. I think the green digital technology is very essential. It is inevitable that the number of edge devices will increase, and I think the I think the so-called green digital technology, which is to reduce the power of edge devices, will become more and more important.
Indeed.
So we will. I am an engineer, so but this technology is needs to very huge investment. So the investment will be will conduct for the future digital society.
Yes, so it will take the multidisciplinary approach. So the engineers, also the entrepreneurs to scale up, the government to support investments and the programs, and then at the end, the consumers to adapt to those technologies, you know. And as we've heard both from Kari and Areti, that this adaptation needs to be organic with the full consent and full understanding of what are we sharing, how we're sharing, and what's behind. But yes, what you're working on, Mr. Sugibayashi, is the building block. It's the very important technology building block within this equation. So thank you. I think we have another question from the audience that I would like to address. And this is also linked to the role of the human in the AI systems and more advanced approaches. And the question is related on the operations of these questions. And I think it is linked to the ethical angle of it. So the operator of the system, what role, shape, requirements, and challenges this operator will have. Are we looking for the sort of philosopher king for something like this, or can we actually assign those functions? Anyone would like to address the question? Areti, please take stage.
Yes, definitely. No, we're not looking for the philosopher king. We're not looking for a Platonic republic where only the philosophers are the ones that reign, etc. No, we're talking about the average Joe, the average person that has his ups and her ups and her downs, that is functional and that is very, very important, that is in the center of this whole energy sector. Let us not forget that prosumers and consumers are us, not even engineers, not even people that know how the energy sector works. So this is for the consumers. Now, for the operators, the people that work there, they can also not be engineers, right? There are people that are secretaries, there are people that are, I don't know, administrative workers, etc. They are in the center of the transformation as much as the engineers and the software engineers are. AI is important, but it is as important as we make it. We don't have, we have this notion in our head, maybe it's due to literature, like Asimov, etc., this dystopic function of AI that we're nowhere near, guys. I mean, we are really nowhere near that function. Right now, it's human beings that make the decisions and everything. When this comes along, ethicists and behaviorists and social science will be there to do something about it, I hope.
Very comforting, Areti. Thank you so much. So the stark messages about the AI dangers, actually, it's in our hands to manage. So not sent from above, but we're all as a community and global community will have to address them together. I assume, Kari, you probably also would like to comment on this.
Yes, I definitely have some thoughts. One of the things, I don't know how universal this is, but in Australia, there's a lot of distrust on the energy sector in general, a lot of frustration with the energy sector. Partly from sort of increasing prices in recent years, and issues with, we have quite high solar PV penetration here in Australia as well. But more and more that's becoming, the rhetoric around that has changed to it now being, negative for the grid. So people have adopted this technology thinking they're doing the right thing, and now they're told they're doing the wrong thing. And so there's just this incredible frustration around the energy sector. And one of the real, I think, challenges is how to rebuild trust in the sector, which is really important for the adoption of some of these automated technologies that will help to manage the grid and produce a kind of a transitioning grid in a smart future. So these data issues, being willing to give control, say, to your charging, to your batteries, to stabilize the grid is a really difficult problem that the energy sector is having to face. And I think that's one of those things, like already just said, there are still humans involved in all of this, and trust and community and negative experiences are all really big barriers that need to be overcome.
Indeed. Thanks, Kari, and thanks for outlining the way forward and what needs to be dealt with. Antonella, I would assume that you also would like to comment.
Well, I can second, it's not just an Australian problem, it's a worldwide problem. The trust in the energy sector is very limited. Somebody told me one time, try to Google just the word smart meter and see what you get. You get so much incredible story of people making crazy connections between smart meters and whatever of negative you can think of. I come from a country, region Italy, where the first installation in Massive was done. People were totally upset because they got an instrument that was more accurate, and that triggered a lot of issues they were not aware. And it's not that people say, oh, finally we got a problem. We found out that we had a problem. No, we had a problem we didn't have before. That's the reaction. So yeah, we need to completely rebuild the trust in the sector. And so that's very critical, because otherwise people will not spend time on the issue. I agree.
Thank you, Antonella. So trust and rebuilding the trust is one of the building blocks. And in linked to that, so trust comes from not only from the energy players or the system itself, also from the government backing up the programs and financing the technology development as well. So just to address the second part of the question we had, which is directed to Mr. Sugibayashi, related to the role of the government support to developing the technology. Could you reflect on that, please?
Thank you for the question. Atom switch technology, which introduced today, this technology have been developing for 20 years.
Okay.
After this long period, we can demonstrate in the satellite. So in this long period, government support us. Government support is very important to realize the semiconductor technology.
Understood. So you're saying that the timeline for the developing of the technology could be long before the demonstration, and then this multilateral support from the private sector and the support by the government is very important, not only on the policy level but also on the investment level. Yep. Thank you. Thanks for sharing the insights with us. For the last round of questions, I would like to focus on the last question that we had for reflections, and have all the panelists' opinion on the projecting into the future. So holding the crystal ball, what needs to be done, or do you envision that we're gonna reach there, and whom do we have to have on board with us for this journey, 2030, 2050? Can I start with maybe Antonello?
Okay, that's definitely the toughest question this morning. Well, what we need on board, I think we say the whole time today is to get people on board, and I think in that respect there are two aspects to make that happen. One I mentioned in my presentation is to create the right condition in terms of business case situation that will attract the interest of people. I really want to invest my time because I see the return for me. This is one. But the second that appeared also in the discussion later is this educational aspect. We talk about in Europe a lot about this energy community. So really making the people fully empowered of their energy. We need to educate them to make that possible. And so bring this complex digital whatever to a level that everybody understand what they're going through. And digitalization is the problem to hide the complexity through user interface that make look things very easy, but they are not. And this gap is difficult in my view.
Understood. So yes, gap dealing and the complexity related to that. Kari, your crystal ball.
I think I would go on that. We need to get people on board. That's number one. And I think one of the important ways that we do that, though, is to think of people as more than consumers, in the sense that they're motivated by more than just the price of electricity. And actually, often they're really not motivated by the price of electricity, because you get your bill so distinctly from when you're actually using and making your decisions. So to me, I think we need to, in the energy sector, needs to start thinking about appealing to people with the ethics for sustainability, and taking that as a more central way in which to get people on board in this transition.
Thank you. Thanks. Mr. Sugibayashi, for the technology development, do we have everyone on board? And if yes, are we on the right track? Could you reflect on that, please?
I think correct.
So you agree that the components are there, it's just a matter of time and moving forward. Okay, thank you so much. And Arati, hopefully it's not the dark message. Hopefully there is light at the end of the tunnel. So if you can reflect and hold your crystal ball. Thank you.
I think that new technologies are nothing more, nothing less than tools that will help us towards a better future, if used correctly and ethically. We need governments and institutions like the European Commission to place a robust, yes, and good regulation system. And we need people to open their minds and be a little bit more educated towards these things. It's a two-side way. Yeah.
Yes,
but everything will be good in the end.
Excellent. So you've heard it from this panel, the audience. Thank you so much, Arati, for the forward-looking and positive message. It's all in our hands, indeed. I think we've heard that there are many moving parts and the components to this. We've heard about very specific topics that need to be brought into the equation. The focus on the open source, on the sector integration, shift from selling electrons to selling services, and co-creating those services with the consumers. On the importance of the edge technologies and the enabling technologies from the semiconductor sector that could be also energy efficient, so that we don't go into the new phase being, carrying over the challenges of the past. We've heard about the new upcoming realities of the lived environments, and many trends that need to be taken into the consideration and actually already researched and known, so they need to be integrated into this new upcoming models. We've heard about the need of the smart grids for the data and the topics related to the governance and ethics related to the data share. Importance of the media and education in bringing those messages to the audiences, and the bioethics, as was mentioned as the term, related to the energy sector, but which is actually beyond just the energy sector. So I would like to thank all the panelists for great insights. I would like to invite the audience to be in touch with us. Continue posting questions, which I understand the organization will share with us, and we will be able to reflect on these questions in writing later on. I'm looking forward to continue these topics in the different forums, and make the digitalization in energy and beyond session the permanent feature of the event in the years to come. So thank you so much for the organization, for the floor, and for the ability to share our insights today.